what's up?
It's a good thing. It's
Today
not.
is January 9th, 2023, corresponding to Yud Zayin Tevet 5783.
Okay, thank you. So, on this topic about Noach lo adam sheyapil atzmo kishana eish, it's better for a person to throw himself into a furnace and not be malvin pnei chavero. I have a list of 6 major kashas. In yeshiva, we used to say, if a kasha was a real big kasha, we called it a bumper or a bomb. So these are 6 bombs on this sugya that are very difficult to answer. So I'll show you the kashas, and then Rav Asher Weiss has a very original way of dealing with all these kashas. I don't know if we'll get up to it today. We'll probably do that next week. So if you recall, Yehuda, Tamar was Yehuda's daughter-in-law. After Erev Onan died, he told her to wait until Sheila gets older. She saw that it wasn't going to happen, that he was going to let her marry him. So she disguised herself as a Zona. She conceived from him, but he didn't know who she was, and she took collateral staff and a ring, and then when she was pregnant, they told Yehuda she's pregnant. Since she was an Eshes Kohen is Chayiv Sreifa. If she's Mizana, it's not clear why she Mizana. She was single at that point. All right, it's a whole long discussion. Why was Yehuda going to put her to death? But Yehuda said, Hotziyav Saref, take her out and let burn her. So the Gemara says, so Rashi says in the top of the page, why didn't she tell Yehuda she told Yehuda, whoever owns these things, he's the one that made me pregnant. So Yehuda said, Tzadka mimeni, she's correct. I was the one that impregnated her. But why didn't she tell Yehuda, what are you doing to me? You're the one that's at fault here. So Rashi says, because it's better to throw yourself into a furnace and not embarrass somebody. So that's the Gemara here in Saita and Daf Yudah Midal base in the bottom of the page. He shocha meha lemor leisha ego lo nochi hara. Why didn't she tell Yehuda who it is? Why is she saying whoever owns the staff and the ring? Amar Rav Zutra bar Tuvia, Amar Rav, Amar Rav Chana bar Bioni, Amar Rav Shimon Chasidim, Amar Rav Yochanan Mishum ben Yochi. No, Shimon Yochai. No, Adam Sheapel Atzmo L'Tzol Kivshan Eish V'Yavim Pnei Chaver Baram. It's better. It's better to throw yourself into a furnace. It's Yehareg V'Yavor. So the big question is it really Yehareg V'Yavor? Halacha Maisa. If somebody will call you up or call me up and say, "Here, I'm in a situation where I'm going to humiliate somebody if I tell the truth, but if I don't tell the truth, I'm going to get killed." So what are you supposed to do? Could you humiliate the person or not? That's the big shaila. So the base up here on the bottom of the page, the Meiri says, "Olam yazir adam shel yavim pnei chaver barabim derech tzachos." In a derech tzachos means just suggestive language. Amr nochel adam she apelatz musal kivshan eish v'yam pnei chaver barabim. It's not to be taken literally. It's an exaggeration in order that you should understand that we're dealing with something that's pretty severe. So now on the next page, that's the position of Meiri, but on the next page, the Binyan Sion, who we saw last week, the Binyan Sion is the Orchel there, Yaakov Edlinger. And he says that from Tosas, it's clear that it's to be taken literally, because Tosas on the first page, I didn't show you the Tosas on the near the top of the page on the right. Tosas asks, why isn't it one of the 3 Yehareg V'Yavors? So Tosas says, because it's not Mefurish B'Kra. There's no, it wasn't listed with the Yehareg V'Yavor, but it's clear from Tosas that it's Yehareg V'Yavor, literally, not just figuratively. If it was only figuratively, then Tosas should say it's not Yehareg V'Yavor, it's just a way, it's exaggeration. So Tosas seems to hold that it's Yehareg V'Yavor. So that's what he brings in the bottom of the page. Shuv Risi Davar Mefurish, but he says, I'm sorry, look at the next to last paragraph. He says, At basi lachkar binyan karav lazeh mutar lahatzel atzol Are you allowed to save yourself by embarrassing somebody? So he says, Shuv Isi on the bottom paragraph, Shadavar Mefurish B'Tosis Sota. It's Mefurish in Tosis, because Tosis says that it's Yehar V'Yavar, and the reason why it's not included in the list is because it's not Mefurish in the Torah. And then he quotes on the left, we learned this last week, he quotes on the left side, he quotes the Rabbeinu Yonah, who gives an alternative teretz to Tosis Kasha, and that is the Rabbeinu Yonah says that it's an Abizrayu the Ritzicha, it's a form of Misa. Each one of the Gimel Averis have an Abizrayu. Gilei Arayis is if a man says he wants to talk to a woman while she's unclothed, that's an Abizraya the Gilei Arayis, and Abizraya the Avodah Zarah is what? That's the Asherah. And the Abizraya of Ritzicha, he says, if you look at in the second paragraph, Ochein Dimu Avak Haritzicha K'mo Shamru Ki Hargul Yirtzach. They compared Ritzicha to Avak Ritzicha. So he says that din from Tamar is Avak Ritzicha. So he seems to say rather clearly that it's literal. It's Yehar V'Yavar. So now the question is, here's the 6 questions. I put arrows next to each one of the questions where they appear in the different svarim. So the Binyan Tzion on the bottom of page 2, where the arrow is, says, Koshali al poskim b'yardei shelo hiskiru rak avak avodah zarah l'srapos batzei sheira v'chein avak gilui arayis l'sapr ima v'lo gam kein avak t'shich zlamin. In Shulchan Aruch it says that avak of the other 2 averis is Yehar V'Yavar, l'srapos batzei sheira and gilui arayis, but it doesn't say anything about embarrassing somebody that is avak ritzicha. How come the Bashari Tshuva says it's a abizraya of avodah zarah because the person's embarrassed. It's like you're killing the person, and the color leaves him, or embarrassment is worth to the misa. But in Shulchan Aruch, it's not brought down. Whether you hold like Rabbeinu Yonah or you hold like Tosis, the Tosis doesn't say it's an Abizraya. Tosis just says that it's Yehar V'Yavar. But either way, why isn't it brought down in Shulchan Aruch? That's the first big kasha. What?
What's the context in Shulchan Aruch?
It's the simon about Yehar V'Yavar. First it says on Gimel Averis it's Yehar V'Yavar, and then it says on Abuzrayo of Avodah Zarah and Gilui Arayis is Yehar V'Yavar, but it doesn't say anything about Shvichas Damim. That Abuzrayo is the Yehar V'Yavar if you're embarrassing somebody.
Even if you don't agree with Rabbeinu Yonah, but if you hold like Tosos, then it should be mentioned.
It should mention as an Abuzrayo. Even Tosos probably also would agree that it's Abuzrayo. I mean, whatever it is, it should be mentioned. It's a big chiddush that it's better to throw yourself into the furnace. So why? It should be mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. How come it's left out of Shulchan Aruch? That certainly would seem to indicate that it's not a real isser.
Why is this the only avak shvichas damim? What about making something poor?
Making what?
Making something money is like committed. Why don't you say if you do something that will make somebody bankrupt?
So that's maybe just. The Binyan Tzion touched on what you're asking. He said that not every time that the Gemara says that it's like the Gemara says that if you're mevazah the moados, it's ki'u over the avodah zarah, but it doesn't mean that you're hard v'yavar for being mevazah the moados. So not every like is literally like, but this one seems to be. Because Tamar was actually, we know the story. Tamar was willing to throw herself into the furnace. On page 6, you'll see I listed all the 6 bam kashas. The first kasha is Lama lo muva b'shulchan aruch she'asu halim chaveru hatzal nafsho. That kasha is asked by the Binyan Tzion that I just showed you with this arrow. Okay, now the next kasha. If you turn to page 3, this is again the Binyan Tzion, and the Binyan Tzion says. How could you learn from Yehuda that you should let yourself be killed in order not to embarrass somebody? Yehuda had no right to kill her. He was a murderer. Yehuda was a rodev. If somebody's trying to kill you, then you're supposed to save your life. That's the second Bam Kasha. So what does the Gemara mean that Yehuda, there's a riot from Yehuda that it's Yahar Veyavor, it's Mutu Hapalatzma Kivshan Eish. How could that be? By Yehuda, he was a rodef. He wanted to put it to death, even though he didn't realize it, but he's still a rodef. If you think that somebody's chayv misa and they're not, so the halacha is kill that person. Even if he thinks, he says, I looked it up in Shulchan Aruch and says I'm allowed to kill you, but he doesn't know how to learn. So it's too bad he doesn't know how to learn. You kill the guy. So he was Yehuda was a rodef. So why shouldn't he be Hargvei Yavar? So yeah. So then, now why should it be Hargvei Yavar? So then the Rabbi Siyam, this is Rabbi Yaakov Ettlinger, says the Teretz. Alvem iskamsa lo kashish are Yehuda ba'atzmo lo yaharag osa rak al pitzivuya haisa neharegas. Yehuda wasn't doing the execution. Yehuda said to his people, Hotzia teisaref, u'inyan zelo nikra rodef lahatzel atzel b'dama, and therefore he doesn't have a status of a rodef that you should be able to kill the rodef. He says he didn't have a din of a rodef because it was grama, a gram rodef. He told somebody, but he wasn't doing it. So right underneath this paragraph, there's a sefer that I have at home. I don't remember the name of the sefer, but it's on different midos. So, and he has a long piece on this whole topic, about 50 pages, about being Mabam Ram. So he says, right underneath the piece we just read with the arrow, B'she'eluzu, Teretz bin Yitzian, Sham Shehuda loya horeg ausa ba'asa, El acher ma'yhorger masal pid tzivuya, v'inyin zehu lo nechshev rodef, Shenita Natzil Atzma B'Dama Ad Kan Dvarav V'Tzarach Yiyin. So he asked the Kasha Sharei Kol Moser Nechshav Rodev Ava Pishu L'Harg Batzo Harak Alpi Misiraso Acherem Misiraso Acherem Hargo. If you're a miser, if you inform on somebody, then you go to the government. This was very, very common in Europe. The people were miserum. They go to the government and if they didn't like somebody, so they go to the government and say, you know what? This guy is cheating on taxes, and they would take him and they would string him up. So such a person is a rodef. You're allowed to kill a miser. So there he's not doing it himself. He's just telling the government. So Chari, you see that it's not. You don't need to do the Maisa Avera of Ritzicha to be called a rodef. You just have to be the one instigating it. So that's the second kasha. That why would he be? Why wasn't he allowed? Why was she not allowed to embarrass him? He's a rodef. If somebody's a rodef, she could even kill him, let alone embarrassing him. Embarrassing him is not worse than killing him. If she had her a gun, she should have taken it out and shot him. Yehuda said, "Hotziv v'seisarav." She should have said, "Bang." So, why? What was the justification for her to give up her life if Yehuda was a rodef?
Well, aren't there some circumstances where you have the option to it's optional. You like, for example, you're allowed to risk your life to save someone else, but you don't have to. So could this be similar to that? What we see from her is that it was mutter for her to.
Yeah, but by a rodef, you don't say that. If Abalu Hargacha Hashkim Hargo, I don't think we say that it's optional. You shouldn't let somebody kill you.
Even if the person is doing it for shogeg?
I would think so. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know. I hear your point. You're making interesting hara. I could be, maybe.
Try to wound them first, but Hashkem B'Hargo.
Yeah.
So the question is only, is that your only option, or is it permissible for you to say, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to let myself?
Yeah, I hear it. Okay, I hear it. It's a good question. There are cases where it's optional. So you're saying that maybe this is also optional because he's a shaygik. I don't know. Okay, then there's a third question. The Mincha Shlomo, that's Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. He has a few chuvas about this. He says, "Adayin kasha harei b'chi agav b'mamon im echad chata chayfetz michavero mipnei sheta." Somebody grabs you're walking in the street, and somebody grabs your cell phone and says, "That's my cell phone. It looks exactly like my cell phone. It's white and it has polka dots. So you stole my cell phone." So Harei Poshet, שזה שלו והוא גנב ממנו. הרי פשוט הדבר שנחטף מותר ועליה אותו בבזן. The person who was robbed is certainly allowed to go to the bezin. הוא הוכיח שהחפץ הוא שלו, אף בכי הגמנה שהחטיפה המובהלת תגרום להחוטף הבנס פנים. Even though the person that did the robbery is going to be pretty embarrassed that he's in court and he's stealing cell phones, it'll be in the newspaper that he's a ganav. So nonetheless, you don't say that justifies that that you're unjustified in going to bezin. In King Amar Tamar Chayeves Utoras Yehuda Gasos Nitva Al Zeh Shegagasal Pasuk Shlokadim V'Hatzel Bekach Gimel Nefashos. Tamar was pregnant, and so it was a question of saving herself and saving her two children. So, and to save children during pregnancy, you're allowed to Mechal Shabbos. So, why? So he's asking that she had a right to go to embarrass him, because that's a, if somebody did an avil to you, you're allowed to embarrass the person. So why was she obligated to give up her life? Why would she have to throw herself into Kivshan Eish? He's the murderer, not her. That's the third question. These are good questions. Fourth question, on the left side. If somebody accidentally is causing an abortion of a embryo, in order to save the uber, would you say that the woman has to, she's not allowed to make a ruckus because he might be embarrassed? In other words, it's not only saving her own life, but it's saving the life of the embryos. He's alluding to the fact that maybe you'll say that the reason why Tamar couldn't consider Yehuda a rodef is because it's all her fault. She created the situation. She didn't tell Yehuda who she was. She disguised herself like a zona. So maybe she's guilty for causing the situation. So maybe she doesn't have a right to embarrass Yehuda because she did something unethical. But what does that got to do with the two Ubers? The koshing hatzel never shall Uber. Meaning Cain after hare shetamer he atzva garma lekach mikoko lama lo tatzel shnehu bar mikloach shash habanas panim hare ben noach neger nerag al Uber become a chal shabbos hatzel Uber. Ben Noach, if Ben Noach kills an Uber, he's chayiv misa. So Yehuda was going to kill the Uber. So the she even if you'll say that she had some liability and therefore she can't save herself, but she should certainly be able to save the embryos. They're not guilty of anything. That's the fourth kasha.
In general, pregnant woman who's chayiv misa gets killed even though her embryo.
That is true. We don't wait. That's the Gemara has a pasuk for that. But here she wasn't chayiv misa, so the embryos deserve to be saved.
So the Torah brings down, I wasn't going to mention, but I can't control myself. He brings, I think, from Yehuda Halevi that he held, that nobody else seems to agree with him, but the Sisaref, he said, meant branding her. It solves all the problems. Apparently there's a Chuvas Rush that says they still doing it in his time. I don't know, he quotes it, but he doesn't.
So what is it? So what does the Gemara mean?
No, it disagrees with the
Gemara. How?
No, it disagrees with the
No,
Gemara.
he's disagreeing with the Gemara?
It sure looks like it.
How can you disagree with the Gemara?
I don't know. Well,
No, Adam Shiyapo Atmos Kivshan Haish.
I'm not saying that. I'm just noting that if
Okay,
you follow
I
that,
hear.
everything gets fixed.
Okay, I don't know. Good. I don't know. I saw it alluded to, but I don't know. Then Rosh Shlomo Zalman asked another question. On the top of the page, by the way, I have a picture of the Binyan Sion. That's with Yaakov Edlinger. You could see the first picture, he's young, and the second picture, he's older. I always find it fascinating to look at pictures of Gedolim when they're young, because it's like if you would meet them when they're young, you wouldn't know that they were going to become, like if you met Rav Moshe Feinstein when he was 18, you wouldn't know that he was going to become the Gadol Hador, the Paisik Hador, or the Chazon Ish. What?
My father-in-law in his sukkah has his Gedolim pictures are all pictures
of-
found on the internet of young Gedolim.
Of young Gedolim.
He asks who can, and very rarely
Do people recognize them?
to recognize them.
Yeah,
He has
but
one
it's-
of
but-
Rav Ovadia Yosef. Chatzal wearing, pants and a shirt, no tie. Nobody can recognize.
But it's a very good lesson because it shows that you could look like a regular person and become a Gadol Hador. So the next question is on the very bottom of the first column. My time ago, Shabbos Habanas. Are you allowed, if somebody is trying to embarrass somebody else, let's say you go to Congress and you're talking about the swamp to the politicians, they're busy embarrassing each other. Each one is trying to make fun of the other one as best as they can. So why don't you say, let's say the politician, let's say they're embarrassing a Jewish person, so would you be allowed to take out a gun and shoot the politician because he's embarrassing a Jew? Nobody ever heard of such a thing. And he says, "L'chara kal v'chomer, ma mutar l'chal Shabbos k'dei lahatza adam v'misa kol shein d'shoy lahatza habanas panim the chomer yofer yisreifis gimel nefashos." You see that habanas panim justifies 3 people getting killed, so it certainly should justify chilul Shabbos.
Well, not shooting somebody, Shabbos. What if you had to take a train to Washington to defend somebody and you're the only witness to that? Somebody, there's a Jewish congressman, anybody,
And defend them from habanas panim.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
they
would be.
embarrassed.
It would
And
have to be protect from a banat panim, not to defend afterward.
I'm sorry.
It would have to be to protect from a banat panim.
That he shouldn't get embarrassed.
I'm saying, yeah, to do that. Yeah, to protect.
Yeah, so he's asked. That's included in his
That's
kasha.
okay.
That it should be able to take a train to Washington to protect. If you know something that the guy doesn't know, and you can prove that he didn't do it, and you'll save him from embarrassment. So the Rav Asher Weiss, we'll see later, says that anybody that thinks that you can be in Chal Shabbos to avoid Malbim Pnei Chaver Rabbim is a Meshugana. That's the way he expresses it in a rather dramatic way.
Is it also possible to say that certain types of people who are nichnas themselves into situations of Abanas Panim, like the Havim
Tamar.
and Tamar, would have a different din? Well, not that wouldn't be about Yehuda, but that would be about Tamar.
But the Gemara, he's asking on basis of the Gemara. The Gemara says it's better to throw yourself into a furnace than to embarrass somebody. So if that's the case, so then it's like you're allowed to sacrifice your own life, so you should be able to be Michal Shabbos.
You could argue that a politician knows that by being a politician they're going to get embarrassed. There's going to be
Okay, all right, could be. You could you want to be Melamed Schus on the politicians in America that they don't. The real reason is they don't have any sensitivity to being Malbim B'nei Chaver Ram. They think it's a sport. The more you embarrass the other party, the better off you are. And then he asked another kasha. This is the 6th kasha. Ram Tzarchian Halapashiru Shichon Vadi L'Tvo Adam Gadol V'Choshev Al Genevus Mammon. If somebody steals something, you're definitely allowed to take him to court. V'Gam Ha'edim Chayavim Vadi La'ayid Al Kach. And the witnesses have to testify. Vim Yimno Milahayid Mishum Chshoshed Abanas Panim Over Vadi B'Lav Shal Im Lo Yagid. There's an issur not to withhold testimony. Avagad Engelcha Abanas Panim Gedol Mizu. V'Gam Garmin Dino Shel Ben Tuvi Lamisa Afal Pi Afimai Yedezeh Ikaz Ilusa Tuva the Abanas Panim Chol Mishpah. The whole family is going to be embarrassed and humiliated. Nonetheless, if somebody is committing an Aveira, if he's stealing, so you're allowed to go to court. There was when I was a teenager, there was a whole nursing home scandal. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember, but there was from people that owned the nursing homes, and they figured out a way to have more people in the nursing home than there really was, and that was when somebody died, you kept them on ice, and that way you were able to claim that you have more beds full. But there was public trials. It was on television. It was very heart-wrenching to see a frum guy with a beard on television, and there was such an enormous chilul Hashem. So
Not the last time.
yeah. So but even though it's a chilul Hashem, but you wouldn't say that you're not allowed to go to court. You know where this issue comes up with there's a molester. If somebody is a molester, there's been a shift in society, but it used to be that people said, "Oh, you can't keep it quiet because you're going to embarrass him, and you embarrass his family, and this and that." And now, we've come a long distance to realize that that's not you can't justify molestation not to embarrass somebody. It's too bad. And even though the family are innocent victims, but you still can't. He has no right to embarrass people. So why don't you say that it should be Yahari Yavar, that you should, to embarrass somebody is like killing him. So why are you allowed to kill him if he's committing a crime?
He's putting himself in that position.
Okay, it could be because
He put himself in that position also.
he put himself in that position. Yeah, the molester did the same thing.
But yes, but we say that Yehuda does have the protection.
Oh, he says that in the bottom paragraph. He said about Ulchar yesh tamer the uvda the tamer shiny minei shehi atzme gar lekach bezesh asasa ma'aser achshil chein garat. Maybe you'll say that Tamar, exactly like you just said, that it's her fault. She created the problem, and therefore she doesn't have a right to doesn't justify her embarrassing him. But he says, "I'm a pashas the Gemara. We're trying to go mashma. The Gemara is not mashma because the Gemara doesn't stipulate that it's better to throw yourself into kivshan eish only if it's your fault." So those are the 6 kashas.
Is it possible to learn the Gemara that the Gemara is not talking about the Maisa right before she was thrown into the Kivshan age, but the fact that she seduced Yehuda in the first place? But the great embarrassment to Yehuda would be for her to say that she had seduced him,
Right.
rather than for her to say that, he...
What difference does that make what the embarrassment was?
Because when was the Maisa, it was Mutzav, so if you hold like this Svara, you could say that...
But if she would, either way, but if she doesn't reveal it, it's not embarrassment. If she keeps quiet, you want to say whether it's that he was Mizana or that he has kids, either way, but if she doesn't say anything, he won't be embarrassed. He's only embarrassed.
But it could be that a third party who knew about it, if anybody else had known about it, would not have had the same din as Tamar. It's only because Tamar herself was involved, then she...
But that's what he says. He says maybe Tamar, since she was the cause, she doesn't have a right to save her skin when she was the cause of this tragedy. But he says that the Gemara is not mashma because the Gemara doesn't stipulate. The Gemara makes a general rule. It doesn't say if you're at fault, then you should. Anyway, those are 6 kashas that are extremely difficult kashas. If you look on the last page 6. Why isn't it brought down in Shulchan Aruch? Secondly, Yehuda Yerodev, that's the Binyan Scenes kasha. Thirdly, you're allowed to go to Bezdin to extract money from somebody who stole from you with a shoygeg, even though it'll be embarrassing to the Gazlan. Fourth question is, why isn't Tamar obligated to save the embryos, or the fetuses rather? Even if you say it's her fault, but it's only her fault for herself, not for the fetus. Fifth question is, my time if you'll say that it's doicha, you're allowed to commit ritzicha to prevent. You should give up your life to not to embarrass somebody. So then it should be permissible to be Michal Shabbos to prevent Habanas Panim. And on the last question, which I didn't show you, is Lama Amar Noach Lama Chayiv. Well, how come the Gemara says Noach? You see that Tosas and Rabbeinu Yonah consider this to be a chiyuv, but the language of the Gemara is Noach Adam Hapel Atzmo L'Kivshan Eish. It doesn't say Chayiv Adam. So that question Reb Chaim Shmulevitz asks on the next page. So let's see what Reb Chaim Shmulevitz has to say about this. He has a very interesting mahalach about this sugya. On page 5, he says like this: Hine Amru Chazal, Nochel Adam She'apal Atzmo L'Kivshan Eish V'Hayam B'nei Chaver Barami. No, Mitamer D'Sivim Mitzeis V'Hi Shochel Chamel. V'Gemara Ksubas Amrosh Mar Ukva Hayanaisin Staka Ani Kishlo Hayani Ro Ehu The Gemara in Iksuba says, in Bamitzia says, in Marukva, the Gemara in Iksuba says, the Marukva used to give money to an ani. One day, the ani wanted to know who's giving him the tzedakah, so he ran after Mar Zutra, and he was about to identify him. Uvarach Mar Zutra nichnas l'taner, and then Mar Zutra went into an oven. That was another example that the Gemara says that it's mutav l'hachnas atzmo l'kivshan eish. And here, by the way, is a case where he's not at fault. He's doing a mitzvah, helping out this poor person, and still you say that so he says. The Gemara didn't say you're chayiv. The Gemara just says noach. That implies, like the Meiri says, in contrast to Tosas and Rabbeinu Yonah, that they both seem to hold that you're chayiv. He says v'adavar muchach sharei ma'aseh tamar shehu mikor lazeh hayufnei matan Torah. The ma'aseh with Tamar was before the giving of the Torah. V'adayin on tztavu al mitzvahs. There was no chayiv mitzvahs. V'yeduim divrei hagon Rav Chaim of Lozhan b'sefer Nefesh HaChaim b'inyan Yaakov shenasa shtei achios. Well, how could Yaakov marry two sisters, even though the others kept the Torah? Mishum sheyada mehasagos el Yonah shayidei kein yisachnu tikunim gedol mechol halamas. Because Yaakov knew that on spiritual level it would be better for him to marry the two sisters. Vayidei vayadan yivnes beis, and through them he would be able to build a Jewish community. Because the efshel of matan Torah, v'achar matan Torah shekibu yisrael Torah. That's the Rav Chaim Velozhin's decide that before Matan Torah there was no chiyuvim, there was no mitzvahs, but you have to just decide what's best. So if a person's a navi and Yaakov knew with Ruach HaKodesh that it was better for him. This way he had Rivka, Rachel, and Leah were his wives, and he had the Yud Beis Shvatim, and therefore, after Matan Torah it would be a rayas, but before Matan Torah wasn't a rayas. So it's just that the others kept the Torah, but when they had a reason not to keep it, so they didn't keep it. So he says, "V'nimsa shelufnei Matan Torah." I'm in the next paragraph. Lo amad adam b'vnei hachra madav mutar aser. Before Matan Torah, you didn't have to decide if something's mutar or aser. Elim hayalav livchon as a tawela sheteitzi mikol ma'isel achriya ma'kedai. You had to just decide what's best, what's preferable. What's that word? Her willingness. From Tamar you can learn that it's better for the three souls, Tamar and the two embryos, to perish, even though they were very special souls, because it was going to be Malchus and Mashiach. So that's why the Gemara only says Noach, because it was before Matan Torah, and therefore the whole Ma'aseh of Tamar was before Matan Torah, so it doesn't say anything about a chiyuv. It just says that you're out that it's better. But what about after Matan Torah? After Matan Torah, there's a chiyuv. Why? Because the story of Marukva was after Matan Torah. The Marukva, in order to avoid the ani seeing who he was, it said that he and his wife ran into an oven. So so you see that after Matan Torah, there's also the same thing, but then it's a chiyuv. Ayin tos esot sheik shalom lo nim nisa abanas panim b'bein ha'averish never meyarg v'yavar mevur mizeh shechiv gamahu shechayiv v'hatzal. From Tosas you see that it's a chiyuv, but Tosas holds it's a chiyuv that's after Matan Torah. But the Ma'aseh of Tamar was before Matan Torah. So he says that's why it says Noach, because it was before Matan Torah. And according to Rav Chaim, all the kashas go away, because it wasn't a real. It was not necessarily all the kashas. Some of the kashas go away.
Which kasha? I don't understand.
The kasha would go away that which kasha do you the kasha with that maybe the reason why Tamar wanted to she felt
Well, she was allowed to,
why was she allowed to?
because there's nothing that's really not permitted. We're saying there's no Torah, so you can do anything you want. So she was allowed to kill the three.
Show off what she saw was effort.
Okay.
Our the main gain would be that's why the Gemara says Noach, because it was before Mount Torah. But anyway, from Tosfos it's clear that after Mount Torah it's a chiyuv, so all our kashas are still standing basically. So we'll start Rav Asher Weiss's tshuva. We'll see how far we can get. Rav Asher Weiss is an amazing person, and you'll see he goes completely against the tide of all everything that's been written about this topic. He has a whole different shita. And he quotes the pasuk in Bereshis. He says, on page 1, B'shas brachos b'msi v'soita Nachol Adam Sheapos Asmol Kivshan Eish V'Yamim Nechaver Rabim. And they learn from Tamar. Next paragraph. Hine Yesh Adam Hayesh V'Zemidis Chasidus B'Vad Hashem Yesh Isher Mamish B'Vanas Mechaver. Is it a chiyuv, or is it something that's just it's preferable, but it doesn't mean that you're chayiv? So he says,
I don't mean it to say that not only is it not preferable, but if you hold the whole God, the Gemara is in a God, it's actually usher.
what's the havamina?
Yeah.
The havamina is because it says Noach.
But could you then say?
But Tos with the we saw the Tos is a raya that it's a
If you
chiyuv.
hold not like Tosus.
If you don't hold like
If you don't
Tos,
hold like Tosus, say not only is it not even a midas chasidus, and he says either it's a midas chasidus or an iser. Could it also be actually usher?
oh, so
to be like Tamar, what she actually did maybe Achar Matan Torah would have been usher, because she would have had to save her Barim instead of Yehuda.
so then what does the Gemara mean that it's mutav?
Yeah, again, that doesn't fit with
No,
Gemara.
if it's better not to. So I mean, you're on the same track as Rav Asher Weiss, but you didn't make the final leap. I don't want to give away his.
That would mean that even though you might have an obligation to embarrass the other person, it should hurt you more to do so than it would for you to give up your own life.
That's not Tosus.
No,
But you have to
I'm
disagree
saying
with Tosus.
I'm offering an explanation as to how you would understand the Gemara if you think what you're proposing,
Right.
that it's actually usher it's usher to give up your life.
But Torah, if you just say that the whole Gemara is in Agadita, as Rabbi said at the beginning of last week, then you would say not only is it not even a midas chasidus, it's not a midas chasidus, it's actually the wrong thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I didn't show you. Maybe I'll go back and I'll show you. In the first booklet, I wanted to show you on page. Yeah. On page 3. There was a companion tshuva, and this has to do with what you've been talking about just now. There was a fellow by the name of Rabbi Oppenheim, who was the Av Bezdin of Ebenschitz, someplace in Poland or Germany maybe. So this name is familiar to me because about 3 or 4 years ago we had a series of shiurim about whether Kaddish should be recited by everybody or only by one person. And Rav Yaakov Ettlinger printed a journal. I think it's called Chovasiyim, but I don't remember for sure. And in that journal, he has a discussion back and forth with this Rav Ber Oppenheim. And he vociferously disagrees with Rav Baruch Ber Oppenheim. My research on the internet shows that there was questions about whether he apparently he was a maskil, and some of the Gedolim didn't hold of him. He wrote a sefer. This is a rabbinic joke. He wrote a sefer called May Bear. So the people that were opposed to him said Lo Nishta May Bear. In the Chumash it's in Bamidbar, it says Lo Nishta May Bear. So you see, in this tshuva, Yaakov Ettlinger is mild. In the other tshuva, about Kaddish, he's much stronger. But here he's ma, but you can see he doesn't care for the approach of this person. He says, Mar Nerio Hisig al Piski Bedin Limsar Atzush Vaish. You disagree with my psak. That you're chayiv to give up your life. And in my opinion, everything you wrote is tamua. It's unfathomable. He says hisig al masha hotzesi psak midin memra the noach l'msor atzmo the ein l'meidim midivri agada. How could you can't learn halacha from agada? This is an agada. So you can't learn halachas from agada. Kamoshi in Trumas Sedeshin v'Psakov. The Trumas Sedeshin says, "Lo yadati." The Trumas Sedeshin says in his he doesn't quote the Trumas Sedeshin. He just says Trumas Sedeshin says you can't learn from agada. So he says, "Lo yadati lo mahutzach lahasig Trumas Sedeshin shein rai kol midvar v'nidin zeh." I don't know why you're asking for the Trumas Sedeshin, which is irrelevant to our case. Shirehu lo kosa shamrak she'ein mechalkim b'mitzvos mibnei tam shebagada. The Trumas Sedeshin said that if there's a reason for the mitzvah, you don't change the halachas based on the reason. Kamosha chiach mima shenasnu tam lemila ushmona shloya aviv imo atzayvim. The Gemara says the reason why Mila is on the 8th day is because the Yoledes is a nida, and therefore we don't want to have the bris milah before she's able to go to the mikvah. V'harei midaraisa she could go to the mikvah after 7 days. V'reigabi yoledes bezov gamkei nimo lishmona. If a woman is a nida anyway, she still has to wait until the 8th day to be mal her son. So you see that even though the Gemara says that's the reason, but it's not an absolute reason. But here the Agada is bringing right from the pasuk, from Tamar. Uvechein b'yoser havi Yishalmi the peyev Shamatosis Yantiv b'shem Shmuel ein l'meidin lo min halachos lo min hagados lo min ha'toseftos el min haGemara. There's a Yishalmi that says you can't learn halacha from Agada. He says achein gamizeh ein hasaga the kvar kosav b'kol haramah. This is one of the Mefarshim. The mash ein l'meidin medrash hainu im sheish b'gemara hepech medrash. Al v'shein b'gemara astiro lama lo nilma ben medrash. Okay, so he that's why he dismisses this approach that even though it's Agada, you know where this discussion comes up in the Gemara says that in Ksubas that there is shlosh shavuos, that shlo yala b'choma, that you're not allowed to forcefully take over Eretz Yisrael, and there's a lot of discussion about that. That's the Satmar Rav wrote his famous. After the 6-day war, he wrote Al Gul Al Tamura, and that's the thrust of what he wrote about is that the Israeli government is totally illegitimate because they acquired the country, or they took over the authority in the country, Shalok Halacha, because Halacha is Shalok Yala B'Choma. You're not allowed to forcefully climb over the wall in order to get into Eretz Yisrael. So that's a lot of discussion. That's a Haggadah. So could you bring a raya from there to halacha? Do we understand it literally, or we don't understand it literally? But anyway, this is the disagreement here between the Binyan Sian and Rabbi Oppenheim. You'll see the Rav Asher Weiss is almost going to say the same thing as Rabbi Oppenheim, so with a little bit of a different twist. So if you go back to the other booklet, page 2. Amnam b'mekaras hanal adayin ein kedei loseis tam l'chumra hayiseira shamra chazal noach lo l'adam shiapas v'kishan eish v'ayam pnei chaver ramim v'ken yesh yistapik ha'im ze gam ze halacha psuko shema ein raya el midas chasidus v'afol yiseira. Is it a chiyuv, or it just means it's a nice thing to do? So he says. The Gemara says it's Noach. The Noach just means that it's preferable, but it doesn't say that you're chayiv. And then you go to the next paragraph. Achein came before by Meiri. The brachas kasav derech tzachos. Amanachol adam she'abas atzvul kivshan eish. Vayam pechaver Abraham. The Meiri says that it's just it's just like a metaphor, but it doesn't mean to be taken literally. The Gemara is just saying it would make sense, but not that you're really supposed to do it. So, but then the question is, so why did Tamar not reveal herself to Yehuda? So you go to the next paragraph on the top of the second column. But there's a rise from Yishonim that it is a halacha. This is what we just saw. Lama Chazal Amru Halacha Zu Behade Gil Averes Chamur Shidim Yarg V'Yavor. Tells us why did the Chazal include this in Yarg V'Yavor? The Tirtzu Lo Noktu Isser Zem became Shenim before Bikra. Chachronim Havinu B'Das Tosus Shachin Habanas Panim Yesh B'Din Yarg V'Yavor. Everybody brings a ride from Tosus that it is a Yarg V'Yavor, and they also bring a ride from Rabbeinu Yonah. V'chein Mashma Chor Gam Di Rabbeinu Yonah that we saw in the Shari Tshuva that the Rabbeinu Yonah says that it's an Abizraya de Ritzicha. And just like there's Abizraya the Gilei Arayas and Abizraya the Shvichas of Avodah Zarah, where the din is Yahar V'Yavor, so it seemed that he's saying the same thing is with being Malvin Pnei Abraham. So the last paragraph he says, Ach Mikem Shanias Laiti Kasha Ad L'Mod Lomar D'Apanas Panim Yesh Ba Din Yahar V'Yavor. He says because he finds it extremely difficult to say that the din is Yahar V'Yavor by embarrassing somebody. Nero Litchok B'meh Demashri Pashas L'Shonam. He therefore he feels that it's just we should be doiche the meaning of the language. V'nir b'dasatosis t'mikeven she'enim afreshes v'krol l'chein ein din Yahar V'Yavor. Tosis says the reason why it's not listed as one of the Yahar V'Yavors is because it's not Mefresh B'Kros. So he says the Tosis means the Shomer Noktu Halachos Habanas Pam Gimel Averes Chamuras Kavanas the Achein Ein Mekoma B'Hadayah the man of Saint Din Yahar V'Yavor. Tosis just means to say that that's not the din. It is not Yahar V'Yavor, even though it's a rather big doichik in the lashon of Tosis. But he's confident that it can't be, and he's going to bring all these rayas that these 6 kashas. He touches on all these 6 kashas to prove his point. And he says, "V'gam b'divrei," page 3. "V'gam b'divrei Rabbeinu Yonah nira de'al af arichos l'shono lo kasav l'hed yeshesh din Yahar V'Yavor mamish b'avanas pam." The Rabbeinu Yonah says it's of Israel the Ritzicha, but he doesn't say that it's Yahar V'Yavor. He doesn't say b'ferish. And then, but he says, "Amnon b'magin avos l'rashbatz." Kasav k'moshi yesh b'avodah zarah yu arayis shehem b'Yahar V'Yavor. Told us Yotzeban kach told us Ritzicha should be Yahar V'Yavor. He says that the Tashmatz Taka says that it's Yahar V'Yavor, but he says uva emes. Next paragraph. Kashim ma'od l'nias daiti lomar diyesh din Yahar V'Yavor b'havanas panim. It's very difficult to say that if you embarrass somebody, it's Yahar V'Yavor. Dimamalvin hari rotzeach yilo gam din rodef. If you say that a malbim is a rotzeach, so then if somebody is embarrassing somebody, so he's a rodef. If somebody is somebody's standing up in shul and he's making fun of the rabbi or the president, so could you whip out a gun and take him out because he's being malbim pnei chaver b'rabim? If you'll say that it's Yahar V'Yavor, so you're allowed to stop somebody from committing one of the Gimel Averis if you say that it's a form of Ritzicha. So that's what Rosh Hashanah says. I'll tell you before. He says, if somebody says that you're allowed to kill somebody who's engaged in being Malvin Pnei Chaver, and there are many cases where people observe somebody else being Malvin Pnei Chaver, I mean, you're not even allowed to hit the person probably. But he says if you think you can kill the person, you're a crackpot. And what about being Mechal Shabbos? Could you be Mechal Shabbos to stop somebody from being embarrassed? If somebody's busy embarrassing somebody, could you turn off the lights in order that nobody should see who he is and he won't be embarrassed? Va'od Arei Shama Matzia Amro Gam Nocho Adam Shiava Asafik Eishes Ish Vayam Pnei Chaver B'Rabbim. The Gemara B'Metzia uses the expression that it's better that you should be, you should live with an Eishes Ish and not embarrass somebody. V'atu Gam Zeh Halach Psuka. You think that should be taken literally? Shesafik Erva Hutra Kedegam Noah Habanas Panim. Val Korchach Shebederach Haflaga Amrukain. Uloka Locha. He says all these things were just exaggerations. Ukamoshe Matzino Shaloshan Hara Shako Keneg Gimel Averis Chamurish Tarafi Hochi Ebe Lashon Hara Din She'Arbi Hour. The Gemara says that Lashon Hara is equal to all the three Gimel Averis, but still there's no halacha that you could kill somebody where you could sacrifice your life not to say Lashon Hara. Ulechein Tama Ani Al Mashikos V'Shal Suas Bin Yitzil and Lebal Arach Lener Sheyesh Din She'Arbi Avar Mamish Ba'avanas Panim. He says he's surprised that the Binyan Tziyom assumes that there is a din of Yahar B'Yavar. V'yeshu Tamoa the Harei Afilu Yehovim Nalei Shekach Mashmi Diretosis Mikom Makom Batzia Halachas Lo Baram Shulchan Aruch. That was one of my kashas. It's not brought down in the Shulchan Aruch any place. Ve'ein Lo Shum Smach B'Direi Paiskim, and there's no source in the poskim for this. So. But you see, the different. So this is like Rav Asher Weiss is known as a person who's willing to take tremendous achrayas. He's a very brave person. I don't know if when he spoke in the shul, I forgot what he spoke about, but I about how the community has achrayas for certain things, and I forgot. I don't remember it anymore. But he has tremendous sense of achrayas, and he has the confidence of somebody. He knows Shas and Poskim on his fingertips, and therefore he's not afraid to take a radical position. So the question is, what's more radical? Is it more radical to say when the Gemara says no Adam the Gemara doesn't mean it? The Gemara is just trying to shake you up, that you should know how terrible crime it is. But the Gemara doesn't really mean it. And we'll have to see. He didn't explain yet how come Tamar was ready to give up her life that he has to deal with. But the Gemara says it. So he's saying it's not. The Gemara just wants to make a startling statement. So he's willing, because of the kashas that he has, then how come you're not allowed to kill a person who's engaged in the Habanas Panim? Why can't you go into Congress and shoot all the congressmen when they're busy making fun of each other? We kill two birds with one stone. You can get a new Congress that way. But if you do it, even if it's a Jewish state, you would be a murderer. And why can't you? Why can't you Michal Shabbos to save somebody from Habanas Pnei Chaver B'Rabbim? So he holds that these kashas are so strong that if you have to choose, it's better to choose that the Gemara is lav dafka. I once heard, I never found it out. I heard from my Rabbi in 10th grade, Chatzkel Lichman Zatzal. He was one of my best Rebbeim. He told us that there's a difference in style between the Rambam and Rashi. If anybody knows where somebody discusses this, please let me know. He said that I forgot which way he said. I think he said that Rashi is a literalist. Rashi, is that the word? What's the word of somebody who in the Constitution? What's it called? A literalist?
Constructionist.
Oh, constructionist. So Rashi it makes the svara fit the language. If the Gemara says something and you have a kasha, so you have a kasha, but it's gotta, the halacha's gotta fit into what the Gemara says. You can't change. And the Rambam in many places is not moved by the Rambam holds in svara, it can't be, and Ram has kashas to prove that that's not halacha. So the Gemara says it, so you have to say it. The Gemara didn't mean it exactly that way. So which one? Here you have a tug of war. It's like two guys on the opposite sides of a seesaw. Who wins? Usually the guy that's heavier. So, but what carries more weight? The language. It says in the Gemara, and you have the story of with Marasutra that he and his wife jumped into the furnace because they didn't want the ani to be embarrassed. So you're going to say all these things, they don't mean it. It says it. So but on the other hand, Rav Shai says it can't be. These
He's got
halachas.
the Erie on his side also.
What?
And the Erie says that he's got a rishon.
Okay, he has a risho, yeah,
he's
but
got
and
to
then
show out
and, but the Tosfos seems to hold not the
Yeah.
way, and Shari Tshuva holds not the way. So he says it Doichib Shad and Tosfos. Tosfos says, why doesn't the Gemara include it in the 3 Hargavei hours? He says, Tosfos says because it's not before. So he says not before means that the halacha is not the way. It's a rather big Doichib, but he's more concerned about preserving the integrity of the svara than he is about the integrity of the language.
But he's got the Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring it down. I mean,
Yeah, he has a lot of riots. I put together my 6 bomb kashas here, so you'll see he touches on them later on. The same kashas. He says Reisi bekobet harmar shenitus miksav yad shalgon of Adaris. Adaris was the father-in-law of Rav Kook, I think. Shesholas agon Rishul Leib Diskin. Im yesh din yar ve'avar b'halbanas panim. They asked Rishul Leib, who was the Rabbi of Yerushalayim, is there a din yar ve'avar b'imam b'nei chaver Ram? V'anu b'pshitas shelo yitochen darizeh. Rishul Leib said, can't be. V'afal pi shechazal amar dahavi k'shvichus damim mikom kon lo shayach b'zeh asfar de yar ve'avar. The Maichaz is Dama Didach Samach Tveid, Dilma Dame Didei Sumach Tveid. The Mar says the reason why there's a din of Yahar by Yavor by Ritzicha is that who says your blood is redder than the other guy's blood? So what right do you have to take his life to save your life? So he says but you don't have that svara by Habanas Panim. So also Adam Shalbinim as Pana of Yishar B'Chaim Hashem Kizesh Yeharig. You're not killing the guy. You're just embarrassing him. So, you would think it's certainly better that you should not commit suicide in order that he shouldn't be embarrassing somebody. That's what the Adaris says. That's what the Adaris. I forgot what Adaris stands for. Anybody know? What? It's what?
I think Avram Dov Rabinowitz Tillman.
Avram Dov
Rabinowitz.
Rabinowitz. Yeah, you're right that the Reish is Rabinowitz. So he says the fact that Chazal said it ain't ze'ela b'derech haflago guzim amru v'tamar nena nago lefnim mishur sadim v'masra nafsha shelo lahabim pnei Yehuda. I Tamar. How do you deal with that? If you say it's just an exaggeration. So he says Tamar was going with the Mishur Sadin. B'shuv Haru Lagan Rav Yishuv Lev Diskin is Divi Atosim B'Sota. But then they showed Rav Yishuv Lev. The Tosa says the wise in the list is one of the 3 Yahweh hours. So you see Tosa holds is literal. V'ishtomim Ech Nelmo Me'ein of Divi Atosim Hamifroshim. Rav Yishuv Lev Diskin said he's surprised that he didn't remember the Tosis. Rav Yishuv Lev is a super genius. He said it can't be such a halacha. It's a kash and tosis, but they couldn't accept the this halacha. Didn't make sense to them, so therefore they said the Gemara is saying an exaggeration. Okay, so this is where we'll finish up next week. But this is, you see where there's a very big tension here between all these kashas. How do you answer all the kashas? And the Rav Shai says, okay, so it's not literal. That's all. Even though it's Tosas is mashma very strongly. It is literal, and then Rabbi Yonah, but he says the Gemara just wanted to make a startling statement to catch your attention. Okay, we will finish the topic next week.
Okay. Bye, Bob.
Thank you.